Hi, y'all. Welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. 844-766-6607. Hickson has that hotline, a guy getting lit up more than me right now, which I'm I don't know if I'm glad to see it. I think that's a poor way to put it. But John Kennedy, our state treasurer, joins us. Yeah, John, I heard on shows here. I didn't get to go to Ellick, but I read some stuff. Somebody sent me something from WWL, and they blasting John Kennedy because they just didn't pass enough taxes. And by the way, I've been here too. I've had people in state that work for state government blaming me for getting 2 furlough days. They blaming me, saying I might lose a job because of me, because I'm against all these tax hikes. But anyway, John, what do you say for yourself?
Well, if you look at the people who are being critical, every single one of them wants to raise taxes through the roof. So I've always figured, Moon, that one way to tell whether I'm doing a decent job or not is to see whether I'm making the right people mad. And I think I'm making the right people mad. I have no apologies. In fact, I'm going to keep doing it. We have a spending problem in this state. Many of the people who are being critical contributed to that spending problem. They raised, we're still looking at the bills, but it looks to me like they raised about $1.2 billion in new taxes. They raised sales taxes, corporate income taxes, corporate franchise taxes, business utility taxes, taxes on purchases of machinery and equipment, which is going to really hurt our business people. They raise liquor taxes, they raise cigarette taxes, they raise telephone taxes, and they're going to try to make you pay tax when you buy something on the Internet. Despite that, Governor Edwards said it was a lousy session, and he's calling them back in. He wants them to raise another $800 million.
Wow.
There has been no spending reform whatsoever. The spending cuts, as best I can tell, were somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 million. Now that's out of a $25 billion budget. On the bright side, there are many bills introduced in the regular session of legislators who want to implement some of the ideas that I've been talking about on your show for years, and others.
Yeah, but they got to pass them. They got to pass them.
But they've got to pass them. And if they do pass these spending reform measures, I will be the first to come on your show and congratulate them and thank them. But right now, all we have is $1.2 billion, which in new taxes, which means that Louisiana families and Louisiana businesses are going to have to cut their budgets so state government doesn't have to cut its budget.
John,
and I think that's wrong.
John, let me throw a couple of things at you. I looked at this thing. If you really look, since they time set a lot of these taxes, last spring it was $800 million. This spring is $1.2 billion. And if you add the next year, and I'm adding the next year because they time set it, so we know what's coming. You add another $1 billion or $1.2 billion. You're really looking at, and I'm just adding up the numbers. 1.2 is $2.4 billion and $800 million. That's $3.2 billion in new taxes since last legislative session. That's less than a year. Now, I might be off a few $100 million, but it could be more because there's some fiscal notes that didn't even have numbers on them yet. So my question to you is, am I wrong by saying it's a $3.2 billion tax increase for the next couple of years?
No, most economists, when they gauge government activity on the financial side, will actually use a longer horizon of 3, in some cases 5 years, to assess not only expenses but also taxes and tax increases.
But this is just two.
No one can deny that the amount of new revenue through taxes and fees that has been raised, which Louisiana taxpayers, both business and personal, have to pay in the last, year, is pretty, it's breathtaking. Now, Governor Edwards says it's not enough. He wants another $800 million. I don't know who the governor thinks is going to pay these taxes. The oil and gas industry is flat on its back. I mean, we've had like 12,000 job losses.
But you know,
it's staggering.
If I use Bobby Jindal's way of doing economic development, and I didn't hear Edwards or Larry or none of these people going against it, if I use it over 10 years, that's $16 billion in new taxes. I'm just saying, if I use it like they did, that's $16 billion in new taxes. I'm sorry, John. I'm just putting it out there like they've been doing it.
No, it's true. I mean, I think you're accurate. It's true that, look, for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, I've been coming on your show following CB, God rest his soul, talking about the fact that we have a spending problem and we're eventually going to have a budget crisis.
Yep.
I was very critical of Governor Jindal's financial decisions, just as I have been critical of Governor Edwards' financial decisions. I think it's unfortunate, let me put it that way, that many people who supported Governor Jindal unconditionally, after all, he can't pass a budget.
Nope.
It was the former legislature that had to pass a budget. A lot of people who were supported him unconditionally are now trying to place all of the blame on him as if they weren't there.
John, I've been watching and I've been saying that from the top of the mountain. This is not, you can blame Jindal, rightfully so. But I tell you what, the governor presents the budget, the legislature does the rest. I know the governor has influence, but the bottom line is they made the decision. And I think a good example of that, John, is that they passed this SAVE bill last year, because that's what Jindal wanted, but they passed it. They passed it 30-9 in the House, okay? I mean, the Senate. And then this year they got rid of it. And so I'm saying they just jumped from one side to the other like, you know, they had nothing to do with the SAVE plan. They had everything to do with the SAVE plan.
Well, in one of the ways I look at it, Moon, you know, at some point you've got to stop regretting yesterday and you got to start creating tomorrow. Now here's where we are.
Good point.
Okay, they just raised $1.2 billion more in taxes. Now they have a chance, they meaning the legislature and Governor Edwards, in a regular session of the legislature to get serious about reforming our spending. And there are plenty of bills that have been introduced to do that. There have been bills introduced to try to curtail the fraud in Medicaid. There have been bills introduced to reimpose the work requirement for food stamps that Governor Edwards got rid of. There are bills to try to control the fact that we have too many generals in state government and not enough foot soldiers. They have bills in there to try to control our spending on consulting contracts. There are bills in there dealing with our pension liability problem. They're really good ideas. I mean, I've been going through the bills this morning that are being introduced. Now is the legislature's chance, and I think they'll have to do it over the objections of Governor Edwards, but they can do it. Now is their chance to show the people of this state that they're serious about getting control of our costs. They either will or they won't. If they do, you know, I'm going to help them all I can. If they do, I will be the first one to sing their praises. But, you know, in life, as in politics, what you do is what you believe. Everything else is just talk. I mean, you can't just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk.
Yeah, no, well, and I agree with you, and that's what I'm worried about. I was handed something that said concurrent resolution, okay, on all the stuff that you're talking about, but it doesn't mean anything. You got to pass laws that make things mean something. So concurrent resolution means nothing.
Representative Lance Harris issued a resolution directing the governor through the division administration to get control of our spending on contracts. And I thank Lance for doing that. I would have preferred to have the legislature say, look, we're going to cut X percentage.
Okay.
And then direct the cabinet secretaries to do that. The House defeated that measure. Lance's resolution got through. I hope it works. I hope Governor Edwards does wade into all these consulting contracts. I've never said he could find enough money to fill the hole, but he can find some serious money. What I worry is going to happen, they put it all in the hands of Governor Edwards and his Commissioner of Administration, Commissioner Dart. What I worry is going to happen is that they're going to study it for 6 months and come back and say, well, there's no savings.
Yeah.
Now, I don't see how there are actually 18,710 consulting contracts, and they add new consultants every day.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even have a database that tells us how many we have. The legislative auditors looked at it and came back and told us, y'all don't even know how many consultants you have because everybody doesn't report to the database.
Wow.
So I know there's some savings there, and if they're in good faith, they will find some. But I worry that what they're going to do, because they're mad at me for talking about it, is look at it for a few months and come back and say, okay, we looked at it and there's no money to be saved.
Yeah, I got a bad feeling that's where we headed at. Anyway, let me take a break. State Treasurer John Kennedy, who's visiting with us about what went on in Baton Rouge. So we'll take a break. Be right back. Welcome back, Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us as we sip on Mellow Joy coffee, official coffee of the Moon Griffon Show. We love Mellow Joy. You will too. 1-866-MELLOW-JOY, mellowjoy.com. John Kennedy, State Treasurer, with me. We're talking about state stuff right now, what went on with the budget. Hey, John, by the way, I hate to say this because our good friend CB is not with us anymore, but I found something CB was wrong on. And since he's not here to defend himself, I'm going to tell you. Because
he's watching.
If he defended himself, I would lose the argument. He said it would take $3 billion in new taxes. By my account, it's already been $3.2 billion from last session to this session. And you're telling me they want $800 million more. That's $4 billion in new taxes from my account. And I'm basing that off the next 2 years.
Well, the Governor Edwards has said he wants $800 million more. They're debating now whether to, as they go into a regular session, try to call a special session to run concurrently or simultaneously. There's some doubt about whether that's constitutional.
That don't make any sense.
So what I think he's going to do is wait until the regular session is over. I think it ends June 6th. And then tell them because he can call them in, to stay and do a special legislative session to raise another $800 million. But just in terms of what they had done now, I mean, think about this. If you're a working Louisianian out there, you get up every day, you go to work, you obey the law, you pay your taxes, try to save a little money for retirement, try to educate your kids, you need a new truck. You go buy a new truck for $30,000. You got to give the government $3,000 right off the top, man.
Wow.
And they just added that 1 penny sales tax is going to cost $300. I mean, we're talking, real money here. If you use a telephone, some of your taxes, depending upon the type of telecommunication service, are going to go up. If you smoke, your taxes are going to go up. If you drink, your taxes are going to go up. If you're a company, your taxes are going to go up through corporate income and corporate franchise tax.
But
we've got one industry. Go ahead.
No, I want you to finish.
I was just going to say we've got one industry right now that's hitting on all 8 cylinders. The petrochemical industry doing very well. It's pulling the wagon. So what do? They raise their taxes. I mean, talk about killing the goose that's laying the eggs for us. They raise utility taxes on our petrochemical companies, which is one of their biggest expenses.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, John, I'm just concerned that, you mentioned $150 million in cuts, and they call them that draconian cuts, and they can't cut anymore. Now, I was under the understanding they couldn't cut any more in this session, in this year, basically with 3.5 months left. But, John, there's a lot of things they can do going into the next year. And I just can't believe they're going to come back with the excuse, we cut all we can cut. And that's what I'm hearing from Jay Darden and John Alario and some of these other people. That's what we cut all we can cut.
Well, I think I've been watching the bills that the legislators, both House members and Senate members, have introduced. And there's some really good bills introduced, Moon. I talked about a few moments ago. I mean, really good bills. They if they pass, it'll go a long way toward getting control of the spending. But I'm not backing up. I mean, a bunch of legislators got mad at me the other day in the Appropriations Committee because I brought in a photograph of a $750,000 sculpture that was paid for by taxpayer dollars last year. Last year, then Lieutenant Governor Darden hired a Philadelphia artist
wow.
By the name of Ray King, spent $750,000 for him to design a new sculpture for the new charity hospital in New Orleans. Now, I love art. I have art in my home. But, last year we were running deficits. Yep. We had mid-year budget cut. We ended the year in a deficit.
Let me ask you another question,
John. Why are we spending money on that kind of stuff?
I agree 1,000% with you. And that's Darden who's supposed to be correcting everything. But let me ask this question, John. How much one-time money was used in the budget? Because we heard that was part of the problem, using one-time money in raiding savings accounts. Did we do any of that again this year?
As best I can tell, between $300 and $400 million that was used to fill the hole in this year's deficit spending. They took money out of the rainy day fund. They took a lot of the BP money and put that in this year's budget to try to balance it. So we're still looking at bills that everything happened, as you know, in the last 30 minutes. But it looks like it's going to be between $300 and $400.
But if you read the press,
which of course is what got us here in the first place.
That's what I was going to say. If you read all the press accounts, you listen to the elected, this is what we did, and we shouldn't have did this, and then we do it again. But they're not writing articles about that. They're not saying, you know what, we can't keep doing this. I mean, but they keep doing it.
Well, there's some members of the press. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, man.
Don't worry about it. I'll do it.
That's just well, I don't want to, but there's some members, I'll put it this way, of the media who are deeply liberal. I mean, they try to hide their liberal bias by pretending to be objective, but I don't think there's any question that certain members of the media who have reported on the session really, really, really believe in more taxes.
Yeah. No doubt.
And they're entitled to have their belief. I just think that they're wrong. I just think that government's gotten too big. I've watched our spending grow 42% over 10 years. It's grown faster than the economy. The economy's grown only 25% in that time. And I don't know how they expect the 12,000 people in the oil and gas industry who've been laid off to pay more taxes right now. I don't know how they expect the small business women and small business men that are trying to hold on right now and keep their people employed and pay their own mortgage. I don't know how they expect them to pay more in taxes right now. And the problem is that too many, not everybody, but too many people at that state capitol building, they're only worried about government's income. Yep. They need to be more worried about people's income.
Well, I didn't see anybody stand up for the people during the session or hear anything or anybody print anything. But this headline came out March 4th. Oklahoma slashes spending 7% due to oil price plunge. Oklahoma slashed spending across the board by 7% for the last 4 months of the fiscal year, John. Okay? March,
yep,
April, May, and June.
They did it. It hurt.
And look,
it hurt, but they did it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But they're saying it was a $1.3 billion budget deficit, not too far from ours, and they did it. And they went home, and they said, well, schools may go 4 days a week, whatever it took. And that's what they did.
Well, I know what's going on in Oklahoma, as you do too. They cut 7%. They did it for, 3 months. It hurt like the dickens, but the public officials in Oklahoma made a decision that it would be better to cut government than to go to their people, their taxpayers, who are just trying to hang on and ask them to pay more money they didn't have. It was a policy decision, and in Oklahoma, public officials did it. That's not what Louisiana did.
We
told all those people out there struggling that they have to pay more.
Yeah. John Kennedy, the state treasurer. By the way, folks, I'll say it again. They're saying John running for Senate. That's why he's doing it. John been on this program for a long time talking about this stuff, way before the Senate run. John Kennedy, God bless. Thank you, bud.
Thank you, man.
All right, we got to take a quick break. More to come, and of course, Open Forum Friday. Talk about the things you want to talk about.